Well, good morning. Every cell in the human body should contain 22 pairs of chromosomes, identical chromosomes, and a 23rd pair, which determines if you're more likely to leave the toilet seat up or down. However, one time out of about 700, instead of two 21st chromosomes, a baby is born with 3. When this happens, the medical diagnosis is trisomy 21, more commonly known as Down syndrome, named after Dr. John Langdon Down, who in 1866 noticed that a group of mentally disabled children under his care shared a common set of characteristics, mental and physical. He noticed that they had almond-shaped eyes, they had a flattened facial visage, they had slightly protruding tongues, and they were of short stature, among other characteristics. On the 21st chromosome also resides the gene that causes Alzheimer's. Because people with Down syndrome have an extra 21st chromosome, they are more likely to get this disease. In fact, they are the world's largest predetermined population that gets Alzheimer's. This fact is actually expected to lead to breakthroughs in how we treat and potentially even prevent Alzheimer's disease. All people, almost pretty much 100% of people with Down syndrome will get the brain changes that are associated with Alzheimer's, although mysteriously not all of them will get dementia. This is my sister Lisa. She has Down syndrome. When Lisa was born in 1970, the life expectancy for somebody with Down syndrome was between the ages of, say, 9 to 26 years of age. My sister is turning 45 on June 1st. People with Down syndrome today can fulfill their potential in ways never dreamed of in past generations. Thanks to improved education, many are finishing high school, many are working at jobs, some get married, some even own their own homes. But as improved care and living conditions began to extend their lifespans, conditions related to aging started to be seen. Families and caregivers noticed behaviors and mental deterioration similar to that seen in early onset Alzheimer's patients. This is how scientists discovered the link between Down syndrome and Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, over the past couple of years, we've begun to see similar symptoms in Lisa. This begs the question, do people with Down syndrome, now likely to suffer from dementia once they hit middle age, experience quality of life and contribute to society as a whole, or is it more humane to stop them from even being born? This isn't a theoretical question. Thanks to improved screening and diagnostic tests, doctors can detect when a baby is likely to be born with Down syndrome. And when parents choose to have prenatal testing, if the results show the likelihood is that the baby will have Down syndrome, anywhere from 67 to over 90% of them will choose to terminate the pregnancy. Why bring an imperfect, disabled child into the world, they may be thinking, when we can try again and have a child who is whole, perfect. And now that the link between Down syndrome and Alzheimer's has been established, doesn't that make for an even more compelling argument in favor of termination? Well, I want to dispel that reasoning right up front. Although I'm sad when I see the changes that are happening in my sister, I also recognize that Lisa has lived and is living a life that is very happy and purposeful, way beyond the years that doctors would ever have predicted when she was born. None of us here know how long we will live and what it will be like as we age. A potential diagnosis of Alzheimer's shouldn't be grounds for terminating a pregnancy. If it was, a certain percentage of us should never have been born either. So society faces a conundrum of sorts. On one hand, we are improving the life of people that are born with Down syndrome and their life expectancy, but on the other hand, more are being terminated before they're even born. I've lived alongside Lisa for her whole life, And without a doubt, she has enriched my life, the life of my family, the life of people that she has encountered in day-to-day living. It's been a long road to integrate people like Lisa into society, to help them reach their potential as contributing citizens, and, together we're better. What a tragedy it will be if we continue the trend which sees fewer and fewer children with Down syndrome being born. Now, the world Lisa was born into wasn't very welcoming. June 1st, 1970, silence descended upon the delivery room. The nurses and doctor knew right away that Lisa had Mongolism. They were called Mongoloid. That was a term that originated in the mid-1800s and was still in use. My parents were told to institutionalize Lisa, that everybody would be better off that way. But the tide was about to turn. Maybe it was John Lennon and Paul McCartney's song that started that revolution. All you need is love, da 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 da. All you need is love. Love is all you need. All I know is that my parents brought Lisa home and we loved her. I kept waiting for evidence that there was something different about her, but honestly, she seemed like a pretty normal baby to me. I remember being told once that children like Lisa have loving natures. Now, even as a child, I was a little skeptical about this. Now, don't get me wrong, she had and has a loving nature, but it's built on a bedrock of stubbornness. I remember, I must have been maybe 13, Lisa was 3, going on 4, and I had taken her to the corner store, and we were a few blocks from getting home when she decided she had gone far enough, and she sat down on the sidewalk, and she refused to move. Now, I tried begging, I tried yelling, and she just was sitting there. And so I came up behind her, and Lisa had this thing where if she didn't want to move, she would just sort of like make her body rigid. So I grabbed her under the arms, and if you do that, then she would like throw her arms up. So you couldn't, like you would try and you would just slip. Well, after a while of trying this, and this, by the way, it happened more than once. This is just like one example. After a while, I was like, crying and distressed. I'd have to find a neighbor because we didn't have cell phones then. Call my dad. He would come drive to where we were, and then Lisa would just get up and go into the car. Now, I have memories like that today because my parents said no to institutionalization, and they said yes to bringing Lisa home and raising her in a family. Together, we were definitely better. Now, Mom encouraged all of us to work with Lisa and to give her lots of extra stimulation. Since I was born wanting to be a teacher, I used to play school with Lisa. I wrote this report card for her when I was about 14. Lisa is a very enthusiastic and outgoing pupil. She seems to be a bit slow in picking up number concepts, but she will, I am sure, get them in time. She is able to understand many of the concepts we have taken in other topics, such as matching. She keeps a neat workbook and notebook. I am proud to have her in my classroom. Now, the classroom was actually a walk-in closet. Then I gave her marks, 50 out of 100 for numbers, 62 out of 100 for speech. She got 75 out of 100 for temper, obviously. And then overall, she came out with 66.677%. Even then, like the rest of the family, I had very high expectations for Lisa. Because it took her longer to learn things, every milestone was really celebrated. The first time she stood unaccompanied, when she learned to tie her shoelaces, when she learned how to print her name, when she went to school for the first time. In fact, thanks to my mother, who was very cutting edge, I think, we actually had Lisa in a regular nursery school, which would be like JK, with other kids. But then when it was time to go to kindergarten back then, she had to go to a special school. And I remember being confused about why we had to do that. We had to actually wait until Bill 82 made it mandatory for all children to get public school education, even those with disabilities. And then more and more children started to be integrated into regular schools and now into regular classrooms. It took parents saying no to segregation and pressuring lawmakers to say yes to Bill 82 for that to happen. And now we have classrooms where children with Down syndrome sit with other kids the same age. Together, they're better. But parents can't do this alone. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village with community support services to raise a child with Down syndrome. Right from the beginning, we were very involved with the Association for Community Living. They oversaw Lisa's education. They provided recreational activities, and they even had a weekend respite program to give parents a break when they needed that. As she got older, Lisa became more active in the community. She eventually graduated from high school. She swam in the local Special Olympics. She went bowling and actually still goes bowling every Wednesday today. She participated in the Friendship Bible program at Grace Christian Reformed Church. And she worked at several community living placements here in town and still does. You can imagine we were very proud the year that her angel art was picked to be the cover for the Community Living's Christmas card. All of this was possible because Chatham-Kent said no to exclusion and yes to inclusion. But you know, Lisa is more than just the activities that she has been involved in and the humble contribution she has made through her humble artistic talent. She also has a unique way of looking at the world. I treasure this birthday card that she wrote when my dad turned 67. To Dad, have a wonderful birthday. The big 6-7. My, you are turning out great. And helping out by raising us up. Because we were like all in our 30s and 40s by then. You gave us what we were looking for. You gave Karen a special job in newspaper as editor. You gave Roseanne a career opportunity in doing computers. You gave Tracy a job by using her hands, by painting pictures. You gave me a wonderful job, Lisa, by letting me go to work on Stewart before it was Parkfield, 1994, 1995, Richmond. I've been working a long time. You gave us important things to do in our lives. From your daughter, Lisa Rebecca Baker. Like the rest of my family, Lisa sees herself as a person with important things to do in her life. Now, my father passed away a few years after Lisa wrote that card, and in 2010, Mom died. Lisa was 40 at the time. She was living in a community living home on Carolinian Place, a move that had been initiated by Mother before, like she saw she was getting sick, and so we felt it was good to have Lisa established in some independent living. There were early warning signs that Lisa had started to lose ground, but I only vaguely picked up on them. She stopped reading and doing word search puzzles, and she started coloring. 2014 marked the first year that there was no Christmas gift list. Instead, she asked if I could get her a case of root beer, and then in a mournful tone, new parents. She went from being able to write cards, stories, and poems to being unable to even print her first name on her monthly disability checks. After a succession of tests, a CAT scan revealed that she had moderate to severe brain atrophy. Now, I was still processing the meaning of that diagnosis at Christmas time. She had slept over, and we were getting ready to go to church on the morning, Sunday morning, and I had to do the children's message, so I was a little bit nervous, and I was running late and behind, so I left her in the living room putting her coat on, and she was having trouble finding the sleeve. I thought if I left her, she'd get there. So I was getting myself ready, and I came back to the living room, and she was still standing there, and she had her coat, and she was just like turning it around over and over, looking for the sleeve, patiently just kind of doing that. I felt that she was waiting for me to offer to help, and we're a very independent family, and so I just wanted her to do it. I mean, even a 3-year-old can do that, but she wasn't getting anywhere. So finally, and not very kindly, very coldly, and without saying anything, I got up and showed her where the sleeve was, and she put her arm in there. Then I helped her put on her shoes. Then I helped her make it to the front door. And when we got there, she stood there and she looked outside, and on the porch there was a little bit of snow, and she has this fear of falling. And she wouldn't move. She wouldn't budge. She just stood there. It was like going to the corner store all over again with Lisa just standing there. But I had no father to call. So I stayed calm. I tried to be reassuring. And eventually I was able to get her out, and we went to the car, and we drove to church. But the whole thing had been really too much for me. I was a little overwrought, and my eyes were watering. Partly it was like frustration, and it was guilt, and it was grief. But Lisa noticed it, and she looked at me, and she said, "I'm sorry." And then she said it again, "I'm sorry." And that cut me. That I had made her feel bad because she can no longer do the simple things. That somehow her losses are something that she has to apologize to me for. And it was in that moment that I recognized that she had become my teacher. That she was teaching me that I'm the one that has to slow down, that I have to enter into the reality of her world rather than forcing her to speed up to fit into mine. And when I slowed down enough to really think about what Lisa's life is about, I began to see that she brings out the kindness in others if they let her. And in fact, she could bring out the kindness in me, a kindness that I had lost along the way with going through life, going to work, being caught up, in the rat race. As she becomes frailer, strangers move in to help. Back in the fall, we were doing our Sunday morning routine, which involves going out for breakfast, and we were going to the chilled cork, and when she hit the curb, she happened to fall. And when that happened, a guy was driving by, and he pulled over on the other side of the road, and he ran across, and he helped get her up. And I was incredibly moved just a while ago when I took her to see ABBA-mania. Now, Lisa's world is slowing down, but she is still this major ABBA fan and Mamma Mia fan. And so one of her care workers, Trish, had bought her front row seat tickets to ABBA-mania, and I'd taken her. And I encouraged her to get up and dance because she's very sedentary, and it's really good for her to be active. So she was up at the front for some of the songs, and she was like, she doesn't move a lot, she's waving her arms a bit. And towards the end, the blonde girl who played Agnetha came right up to the very front where Lisa was standing with her arms up, and she reached out and she took her hand. And doesn't that mean something? When your life brings out the kindness in other people, when it brings out the kindness in your family, your friends, your staff, your co-workers, even in passerbys and tribute band singers. I told Lisa I was going to be talking about her, and I asked her what she would want people to know about her. And she said, to be nice to me. To be nice to me. I feel sad when I notice fewer and fewer children with Down syndrome. They can bring out the best in us, the best in society, if we let them. Our vision of the world can be so much bigger than it is today. In many ways, we're headed in the right direction. First, we said no to institutions, and we said yes to raising children like Lisa in family homes. Then we said no to segregating children in special classes in schools, and we said yes to integrating them in regular classrooms. And now we're beginning to say no to sheltered workshop settings and saying yes to hiring people with Down syndrome into our workplaces and paying them competitive wages for the real work that they do. And you know what? People with Down syndrome are speaking up. They're standing up, they're being heard, and they're being noticed. They're saying yes. Yes, we can be actors, sports stars, artists, and university graduates. When you leave today, please spread the message that together we're better. People with Down syndrome and other special needs are valuable members of our families and communities. Please go out of your way to demand full inclusion for them in your workplaces, recreational events, and communities, and schools. And if you're a prospective parent yourself, or if you're in a position to influence one, please learn and share the facts about what it's like to raise a child who just happens to have one extra chromosome. There are challenges, to be sure, but when isn't parenting a challenge? All of us can give a resounding yes and a hand reached out in kindness to our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and community members with Down syndrome and other exceptionalities. Community Living Ontario sums it up when they say, together we're better. When society is more caring, everyone's lives are enriched, and we can create a world we can be proud of. Thank you.